Life is hard sometimes, but having a show that you not only see yourself in, but that also helps you laugh through the hard times goes a long way. Parks and Rec is one of those shows that has very relatable stories hidden in the humor. Hi everybody, welcome to Mind and More, where we talk about anything that comes to mind and more. Today, I'm talking about Parks and Recreation. Parks and Rec is a comedy that ran for 7 seasons, which follows the lives of employees at the Parks Department in the city of Pawnee, Indiana. The main character, Leslie Knope, is extremely optimistic about the work the department does, while the rest of the staff just kind of go to work to get paid, which in itself is very relatable. But apart from that, there are many other things they go through that feel very real, from struggling to pick a career path, to failed businesses, and even mental health struggles. Let's dive into some of these stories. The first one is Tom's failed businesses.
Baby Tuxedo Clothing Line, a department store with a guest list. White fur earmuffs for men.
Tom Haverford is a flirtatious, confident, sometimes cocky guy who dresses well and is always thinking of business ideas. Some of these ideas are good, but the vast majority lead to failed ventures. Over the course of the show, Tom pursued a ton of businesses which failed, and if you've ever tried to start a business or even just a small side hustle that didn't work out, I'm sure you can relate. Sometimes things fail because you didn't know what you were doing when you first started, like Tom and John Ralphio, when they opened Entertainment 720 without a proper business model and quickly went bankrupt after. Other times it's because you make a small slip up that has big consequences, like when Tom launched Snake Juice and was a big hit the first night. However, he had to let go of the business because he'd made the mistake of inviting everyone at the Parks Department to the launch, which was misconduct. So it was either he let go of the business or he'll lose his job.
Way around it. You're gonna have to sell your shares in the snake hole.
No!
There were also other businesses like Rent-A-Swag and Tommy's Fresh, which didn't work out. Despite falling down many times, one thing I admired about Tom is that he always got back up and tried again. He eventually succeeded with Tom's Bistro, which became a very popular food spot, and although after a while he got knocked down again after trying to expand, that's a part of life, and he got a best-selling book out of the experience. The next thing is April's career.
I've been on this weird path my entire adult life, and I need to figure out what I really want.
Contrary to Tom, who was always bursting with ideas, when April Ludgate first started at the department, she had no idea what she wanted to do or what she wanted out of life in general. April had a hard time figuring out her career. She started off at the Parks Department as an intern. She wasn't particularly interested in working there, but had to take it as part of her college requirements. After completing her internship, she then spent about 7 years working at the Parks Department with no real passion for the work. Has anyone ever started something just because there was nothing better to do, then found themselves years later still in it and starting to feel stuck?
And years have gone by, and now I'm here, and Andy and Ben have been helping me look into different jobs to figure out what I really want to do.
In season 7, she finally decides she wants to quit her job. She still isn't sure what exact job she wants, but unlike in the beginning, she now knows what she wants out of it. In season 7, episode 8, we see her list of things she wants out of a job, including working one-on-one with people, being her own boss, and getting to come up with creative solutions to problems. Her government job wasn't what she wanted, but it did bring her closer to knowing what she did want. She eventually realized she wanted to work at the American Service Foundation, helping other people figure out their careers. April often came across as indifferent, even though she actually cared. I can understand why she initially used this indifference to mask her fears. At any age, it's scary to choose just one path when you're still figuring out who you are, which is a lifelong journey in my opinion. And when you're young, youth makes this choice even more complicated because you often haven't seen enough to know what you want. Finding a sense of purpose is a long, winding journey for many of us, and Miss April Ludgate is very relatable for depicting that. The third relatable story is Ben's humiliation.
God, I was so jealous of you.
You shouldn't have been. I mean, it ended up kind of ruining my life.
When Ben Wyatt first appears in Parks and Rec, he's a state auditor who's there to evaluate the city's funds. But he hadn't been an auditor all his career. He'd actually been a mayor before. He'd been elected as mayor at only 18 years old, then failed to manage the town effectively before being impeached after only 2 months on the job. And for a while, this reputation of failure preceded him. Every time someone realized he was Ben Wyatt, the failed kid mayor, he'd end up getting made fun of. So embarrassing. But many of us have had something humiliating happen to us. It can be on a public platform like Ben, or you could take your L in private. Either way, it can take some time to get over it, and it can impact the way you view yourself or your abilities. It's not easy, and for a while, you can feel like you never live it down. But nothing lasts forever. Ben eventually got to a point where he was past that humiliation and rebuilt his career, eventually progressing to being a congressman. The next relatable moment was Chris's anxiety and depression.
Does that make sense? My anxiety has kept me up for over 50 hours.
Chris Traeger's mental health struggles are something that I've talked about before. I actually have an entire video on lessons we can take from his mental health journey that I uploaded not too long ago. Chris entered the show at the same time as Ben, and at the start, he seemed like this good-looking, positive guy who had everything going for him. Chris was always smiling and happy, and a lot of us have had moments when we're down but have to keep it together. But for Chris, after a while, it became clear that he had some mental health challenges bubbling under the surface. He struggled with anxiety and depression for various reasons. He had fears about dying alone, never having found love or had children, and he was also preoccupied with staying healthy after having previously had a blood disorder. As a result of this anxiety and depression, he'd often spiral at the smallest inconvenience. I mentioned this in my video about Chris, how an anxious mind feels full and a depressed one feels heavy, so you can't take anything more than you already have on your plate. If you've ever had moments when your mind is not at its best, you know what I mean. In Chris's case, he was going through it, but after starting therapy, he eventually started to get better. He still had moments when anxiety would catch up with him, but overall, he learned how to cope. Once again proving that nothing lasts forever. The final relatable thing I'll talk about is Anne's dating phase.
Who?
The photographer guy?
Oh, yeah, we broke up. I didn't tell you that?
Why? I liked him.
Yeah, I did too. I couldn't deal with his face.
When the show first started, Ann Perkins was in a long-term relationship and living with Andy. At this time, Andy had no real ambitions, and that eventually put a strain on their relationship. After her breakup with Andy, she briefly dated Mark and then Chris. After this breakup with Chris, she goes through a time where she dates a lot of different men. A lot of names pop up, like Jesse, Matthias, Perd, and even this guy.
Probably know me from my morning radio show on 93.7, Crazy Ira, and the douche.
What's relatable about this is that she had to get through a lot of frogs on her search. She was at a point when long-term relationships like the one she'd had with Andy hadn't worked out for her, and he, meaning Andy, had moved on with April. She wanted to figure out what she truly wanted, so she dated around. Some people are lucky enough to find the one with little effort, while others have to search a little more. Let's also not forget those who choose to just sit out the game altogether. But my point on this one is, Anne wasn't afraid to see what's out there, and although her search resulted in some questionable choices, again, this guy, she did end up finding someone who suited her in Chris. Anne is proof that although sometimes it could take a bit of time and effort to find the person you get on with, it's possible, and it's worth the wait and worth the effort. At the end of the day, Parks and Recreation is a light-hearted show, but it stays relatable because the characters sometimes struggle and go through life's challenges like we all do. Also, these challenges aren't just resolved after a single episode. It takes Tom, April, Chris, Ben, and Anne a bit of time to find their way forward, and I appreciate this realistic approach. All in all, apart from making us laugh, one thing this show does very well is reminding us that things have a way of working themselves out.